Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I have never had to record my voice or film myself before, but it's been a fun process. I'm going to be covering the first part of the article that Brittany and I chose to do. It was about aggression. The article is titled, "Does Venting Anger Feed or Extinguish the Flame? Catharsis, Rumination, Distraction, Anger, and Aggressive Responding" by Brad J. Bushman. So, to simplify the title, the article is an aggression study, basically of how to or ways to diffuse anger. So let's get started. The introduction of the article tells us that our culture as a whole holds value in the belief of venting anger. It even promotes it through various forms of media. There's a lot of violence depicted on television in general. Many popular shows have violent content. Some, to name a few, would be The Walking Dead, Criminal Minds. It can be very dangerous, and we really need to be careful what we're viewing, reading, listening to, etc. Even music in certain genres portrays violence. The first theory we're going to look at is called catharsis theory. I'm going to first attempt to define what catharsis is. It is a concept in psychoanalytic theory. Its origin is from the Greek word katharsis, and that is with a K, that has a literal meaning of purging or cleansing. The concept behind catharsis is basically eliminating the negative emotions that are inside of you as a result of some trauma or event, something of that sort. Now that I've defined that, let's look at the concept of catharsis theory. It centers on the idea that if a person vents their anger, it will then produce a positive improvement in their psychological state of mind. If an individual acts out their aggression, it is a way for them to purge or cleanse the negative emotions that are inside of them. Okay, let's move on to Sigmund Freud. I know we have all heard about him. Sigmund Freud is the father of psychoanalysis. He believed repressed negative emotions would build up inside of an individual, and it would then result in psychological symptoms. He believed that threats and insults to the ego have to be purged through these expressions of anger. He concluded that anger is better off being expressed rather than bottling it up inside. His ideas regarding emotional catharsis form the basis of a hydraulic model of anger. He compared anger building up inside of a person to that of hydraulic pressure building within an environment, and it then needs a place to escape. The role that catharsis plays is relieving the pressure that's building up inside of the psyche. So therefore, hypothetically, venting these negative emotions of anger should get the anger out of your system. Researchers began to conduct studies on this theory, and they very quickly ran into problems. They had participants receive an insulting remark from a Confederate, and after receiving the insulting remark, half of the participants pounded nails for 10 minutes, while the other half of the participants did not pound nails. The next step was for all of the participants to criticize the Confederate. The results showed the opposite of the hypothesis. Those who did not pound the nails were less aggressive towards the Confederate. Now, let's look at our second theory, which is called cognitive neo-association theory. Aversive events are things like frustrations, provocations, and hot temperatures. These are going to produce negative effects. The negative effects then stimulate our thoughts, memories, expressive motor reactions, and physiological responses that are associated with the flight and fight responses. You're probably wondering what the connection with all of this is, and that connection is that flight associations are what give rise to rudimentary feelings of fear, while fight associations give rise to rudimentary feelings of anger. Now that the foundation has been laid out, I can define what the main concept of this theory is. So cognitive neo-association theory asserts that an associative network is formed when aggressive thoughts are linked with our memory. The activation of aggression triggers a complex of associations regarding aggressive ideas. I want to make a point very clear the way cognitive neo-association theory's hypothesis contradicts the first theory I talked about, catharsis theory. Cognitive neo-association theory hypothesizes that venting anger increases aggressive behaviors rather than decreasing them. Some forms of venting would be acting out aggression on inanimate objects such as pillows or punching bags. It's also common for people to throw things, kick, and even scream. The concluding point of cognitive neo-association theory would be that venting will keep feelings of anger active in our memories longer, which would then increase the likelihood of aggressive responses. The final thing I'm going to comment on before I turn you over to Brittany's portion of the presentation is about rumination and distraction. In the article we read, rumination is defined as self-focused attention on the self. In particular, it is on someone's negative mood. Processes that aggravate and increase negative mood then increase anger and aggression. It's interesting, John Lee, the author of Facing the Fire, Experiencing and Expressing Anger Appropriately, he actually suggests to his readers that they should imagine whoever or whatever they are mad at while expressing their anger in whatever way they choose. He believes that you are actually conducting violence on yourself if you hold your anger in. Now that we know what rumination means, I want to discuss distraction. It's opposite of rumination. Processes that distract or draw attention away from an angry mood will reduce anger and aggression. Not surprisingly, there's actually been previous research done on this topic that validates the claim regarding rumination increasing angry feelings. During one study, college students were angered by reading a story about a professor who had treated a student poorly. The students were then told to imagine themselves in the position of the student that the professor was treating poorly. A portion of the students ruminated by writing about emotion-focused and self-focused topics. The other portion of the students in the study were distracted by writing about topics that were not even relevant to the story about the professor. The results showed that the students who ruminated were angrier than the students who were distracted. I want to also briefly touch on several other studies that were conducted. One used complex math problems as a way of distracting participants and therefore decreased anger. Two other studies found that rumination increased aggression after a triggering event. The first study forced participants to either focus their attention on their negative mood or they forced their attention away from negative mood. Later, they engaged in displaced aggression against a competent or a fumbling Confederate. The participants who were provoked and ruminated engaged in more aggression against the fumbling Confederate, while those who were distracted did not. The second study replicated the findings from the first study. However, there were a few differences. They did use different operational definitions, and they used an 8-hour rumination period, which was significantly longer than the first study. Okay, everyone, that is all I have for my portion of the presentation. I'm going to turn you over to Brittany now for the second portion. We're almost done, and I hope you all do well on the remaining assignments. I know I've really enjoyed this class, and I hope you all have as well. Good luck. Thank you.